Hey folks, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first ever book review. I've got a stack of books over here that I'm going to be reviewing for you, telling you my thoughts. Little disclaimer, I'm obviously not a professional. I don't do this for a living. I feel like that needs to be said. I do have a GCSE English, literature and language, so maybe this is the time where I actually get to use some of the skills that I learned in school and they said you'll need this one day, and I'm still here like, why? Well, maybe the book reviews is why. Anyway, I'm going to get cracking with the first book. I'm just going to do this in pile order. I didn't order these in any way, but the first book I want to talk about is, I finished these, by the way, the span of maybe like 8 months to a year. I do read often, but it just takes me a long time to read a book. I'm a slow reader. I dip in and out of books quite frequently, and I usually have about 3 on the go. So this one I actually read in October of last year, so quite a while ago. But this is I Never Said I Loved You by Rick Samada. It's a memoir of his life. So it's an autobiography, I guess you could call it if you boil it down, but I would say this is the least dry autobiography I've read, because you know some autobiographies are just a little bit, they don't flow that well. They're just kind of like facts, facts, facts. This book is one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. It's quite intense, like it covers a lot of different topics. His life is very interesting and very sad, and also told in a way that is like it shows the heartbreak in it, but also made me laugh out loud. Like I'm such a big fan of how he writes, and if you haven't heard of him before, I hadn't heard of him. I only heard about this book through the Control Alt Delete podcast, which I listen to every single week. It's hosted by a lady called Emma Gannon, and it's anything to do with social media or the internet or creative industries, freelancing, and she interviews loads of different people. And he was on the podcast one week, and he was an actor and now he's a journalist for The Guardian, so obviously he writes pretty darn well because that's his job. Each chapter, I won't give you any spoilers, no spoilers in this video by the way, but each chapter is written as a how-to, but it's not a guide. Like when I first saw this contents list, I thought, oh, please don't be a self-help book, because it's how to keep going, how to remember, how to die, how to be in your body, how to be in other people's bodies, how to grieve, how to be alone, how to let go, how to work, and how to talk. I just can't recommend this enough. I think it's a really, really beautifully written book, and anyone I've recommended it to really, really enjoyed it. Apart from one person, my friend, I recommended her this book and she got the audiobook. And what I would say is I don't recommend you get the audiobook, because I can imagine the topics covered in this, I think I wouldn't like them being read to me. Like I wouldn't like him in my ear telling me about his experiences, his life, because it's just nicer to read in my opinion. And I don't think she even got through it because she said it was she just didn't enjoy it. So that's my only little tidbit. I'd say get the book or the Kindle version, not the audiobook. The only other thing I would say is I don't know why it's called this. I still don't know why this is the title. It's one of those books that you're reading and you think, oh, this line is going to be said at some stage, but I'm pretty sure, unless I missed it, I don't think that's ever mentioned. So, I don't know, likes to keep people guessing, I guess. But yes, book number 1, I'd give that 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given. This I picked up on a whim. Like I've never heard of Florence Given before. Florence is actually a social media, I guess, influencer. Like she has a very big social media platform. I think this is the first book she's written. I think she got the book deal because of her social media presence, and it was £12.99, and the book cover really drew me in. Like I think the concept is really solid. Women Don't Owe You Pretty. It's basically about challenging the idea that your appearance, you need to look a certain way to be treated a certain way, and the whole kind of the privilege that looking pretty can give you, and also the security of looking pretty, like how people will treat you differently if you look a certain way that society dictates is pretty. And I think that premise it's a great premise for a book. I think that it's a really good idea. I think the execution is absolutely piss poor, and I wouldn't recommend this book to my worst enemy. Okay, that's a bit harsh. That's a little bit harsh. It's a 2 out of 10 for me. It's a hard pass. I don't recommend this book to you. I think it's a very pretty cover. I think the illustration is beautiful, but I do have a qualm that I will get to in a second. This book is not very well written. It's written like an Instagram post. I was reading it thinking, how does this have how is this a Sunday Times bestseller? I don't understand. And I thought, in my head I was thinking, this is literally just like Instagram posts but kind of chucked together, like poorly written Instagram posts chucked together. And I thought it was just me, but then I looked at some other reviews, and there are quite a few reviews that say like this is an Instagram post as a book. It's a very shallow look at a topic that she could have delved deeper into and given some really cool insights. She could have talked to a lot of different people who have a lot to say about this. Like she kind of like touches on transphobia, and I think if you've never heard of those things, if you've never been exposed to those kind of things, or like homophobia, or it kind of dips its toe into many different kind of boxes, but it doesn't dips its toe into boxes, pools, what's that phrase, dips its toe in the fingers in pies, I don't know what the phrase is, but it's almost like trying to do everything and at the same time it does nothing. Weird little check boxes at the end, they're like check boxes for checking your privilege, which are so basic, like they're just maybe, I don't know, it's hard to gauge how educated you are on certain topics. I haven't studied feminism, do you know what I mean, but I still think this is a shallow look at the topic. And yeah, I posted this on my Instagram story saying I gave it a 2 out of 10, and so many people were like either agreeing with me or either saying like, oh, thank you so much, I was going to buy this and I'm so glad I didn't because it sounds not great. Only redeeming factor maybe with a clause is that maybe if you don't know anything about, if you've never really looked into feminism, you don't know much about the patriarchy, you don't know much about like transphobia and how, you know, you haven't really thought about your self-esteem, you haven't really, you know, if you're maybe an early like a teenager, maybe this might be a good introduction, but again, it's not very well written. And also a lot of the pictures, the actual illustration's beautiful, but a lot of the illustrations are just of people smoking, like, which makes me sound like a real square. Obviously people are allowed to smoke if they want to smoke, but if this book is aimed at teenagers, why the heck is every single illustration holding a cigarette? It's just such a kind of like cliche, oh, I'm really cool, like I'm holding a cigarette and I don't care about what people think about me and I'm just, you know, so misunderstood, you know what I mean, like that typical, she had such an opportunity, or whoever illustrated this had a really great opportunity to showcase a lot of different women who are more than just their bodies not smoking cigarettes to be cool. Like, you can be perfectly cool and not smoke. I'm not kidding, they're basically all smoking. I don't get it, I don't understand. And again, maybe I'm just being a square, but if this is aimed at teenagers, I just think glamorizing smoking is really, really silly. Not my favourite book I've ever read. Hard pass, that one. 2 out of 10. Next up, let's flip things back to a positive. This was I Am Not Your Baby Mother, What It's Like to Be a Black British Mother. This is by Candice Brathwaite, who is a blogger actually. She's kind of like a mummy blogger, but with a twist. Like, she's not a typical mummy blogger, and I have to be honest, I don't follow any mummy bloggers. I don't follow family vloggers. I'm not really a fan of people who exploit their kids for money. It's not really obvious exploitation, but like, you know, when kids are so young, and I think there are different kind of levels of family vloggers. There are some that are kind of like the Michelaks. I think they do their family vlogging very tastefully and they leave a lot out. It's just kind of like the highlights reel. Then there are some that, not Candice, this is not aimed at her at all, but I do think there are some other family vloggers that just push. I think we all know the type that just push it too far, like share way too much about their children, and I just find that really icky. But what Candice pushes for is diversity in motherhood. Again, I don't know much about, I'm not a mother, I'm nowhere near being a mother, I do not care for that at the moment, but she noted in this book and in the interview she gave on Control Alt Delete how whitewashed the mummy blogging world is, which is again something I mean I don't find it hard to believe, because it's the case in the vegan blogging world, it's the case in many different areas of blogging and on the internet and in media. So I don't find it hard to believe at all, but I had never really heard of it. So this book kind of follows her. It's not really a memoir, it's not an autobiography, it's more just kind of like touching on a few points in her life to do with sexuality, things to do with obviously motherhood, and how like her experiences having a baby and raising children. It was quite short, like I read it in a day and I did really enjoy it, but I kind of was left wanting to know more. I don't know if that's quite selfish of me, but like I wanted to know it in more detail. Like it felt like I just wanted more. Maybe it's because I just liked her. I liked the way she spoke about things, but it definitely touches on a lot of important areas, especially the thing that hit me hardest, because I actually have watched a Refinery, I think it's a Refinery 29 documentary or a Shady documentary on YouTube about the fact that black women, when they're pregnant, they are much less likely to be believed when they think something's going wrong with their pregnancy. When they're in pain, they're less likely to be given painkillers. They're just treated differently and treated less favourably by doctors. It's just horrendous. Like, it's really heartbreaking. And if you are a mother and you want to look for a more diverse kind of community online, then I really recommend checking out her social media, because she has her social media and then she also has the make motherhood diverse sort of side of things as well. And if you're looking for a book, kind of a book to educate yourself on race, but not, I wouldn't say not too heavy of a book, but just a slightly shorter book than some of the books I've seen on recommended reading lists, I do think this is a good one. I would give it 7 out of 10. Oh, actually, on that note, another book I finished but I've actually lent to a friend to read is Your Silence Will Not Protect You by Audre Lorde. She has this amazing sort of title that she used to describe herself with. I think it's something like black feminist lesbian warrior poet. She was just the most amazing writer, and I picked up this book in Margate when I went last summer. I finally finished it because it's kind of like a collection of essays and poems, and I dip in and out of books, and I finally finished it, and oh my gosh, her poems, her essays, just incredible. It is one of those books that you can read an essay or a poem and kind of put it down and then reflect on what you've read and come back to it, because it's, you know, like a lot of these topics are quite hard hitting and they do take a little bit of reflection time as well, but I just think it's great. It's a great book and I really recommend it. So that's a 10 out of 10. I do have to say that's a 10 out of 10. But moving swiftly on to this book, it's got some dried nail varnish on it, just ignore that. This was How to Overcome Your Childhood, Understand the Past, Move On to the Future. Sounds quite dramatic. This is actually written by the School of Life, who are a YouTube channel, like an organisation who make videos about different topics like philosophy and also psychology, so things like attachment theory and like why we fall in love with who we fall in love with. It's really, really interesting, this book. It's not like an in-depth dive, it's only like 100 pages or so. I'll just read a tiny little bit of the blurb. It says, "To an extraordinary and humbling extent, who we are as adults is determined by events that happen to us before our 15th birthday. The way we express affection, the sort of people we find appealing, and our understanding of success are all shaped by events in childhood. In order to liberate ourselves from our histories, we must become fully aware of them," blah blah blah. I find it fascinating how we are a result of like those first few years of life, like our personalities and our strengths and weaknesses. It sounds very dramatic, it sounds like it's going to be some kind of self-help book, but it's not. It's just sort of skimming the surface on how who we were and how we were treated as a child can affect how we are as an adult. And I find it infinitely fascinating. It actually prompted me to purchase 2 other books that I'm kind of dipping in and out of, got them on the go. The Boy Who Was Raised by Wolves and The Body Keeps the Score. So they're more in-depth looks at trauma and the more psychology side of like childhood and development and things like that. So I'll keep you posted on those ones if I do another book review, because I really enjoyed this and I do really recommend. Next up, this one I read ages ago, like over a year ago, because I picked this up in Lisbon in LX Factory and I really, really enjoyed it. It's a really good introduction to minimalism and the idea of how having less can actually make you more happy, even though society teaches us that more is better and bigger is better and more money will make you happier and more things will make you happier. This is called Goodbye Things. It's by this man called Fumio Sasaki, and he basically got rid of everything he owned, apart from, he was living in clutter for years and years. I'm trying to think back because I did read this ages ago, but he was living in absolute clutter for years and years. He was a maximalist who turned into a minimalist. He just got rid of everything. Like, he's got a bed, he's got a sofa, he's got a laptop, he washes himself with 1 bar of soap, he has 1 towel, he has like a capsule wardrobe, so like 4 shirts, 4 pairs of trousers. Like, it's a very streamlined way of living. It's very easy to read. You can just pick it up and kind of flick through it and read it. It's got sort of like a title and then a paragraph and then a title and then a paragraph, and I think it's great if you're struggling to let go of your things, if you've been having clear outs and you just can't get rid of things, but you feel like, he talks about the chaotic energy that comes from having lots of clutter and the energy that comes off of things, which I know might sound really airy-fairy, but I 100% related to what he was saying, like there is an energy that comes off of unsorted clutter, a kind of stressful energy, if that makes any sense. And yeah, it saves you a lot of time. Having less stuff saves a lot of time, and obviously money as well, like if you're not buying as much. Obviously he is like an extreme end of the spectrum. Not everyone's just gonna have like one bed, no decoration. Like I do like decoration and art and things like that, so I don't think I'll ever be a true minimalist, but it definitely was a little prompt in my way of in my like journey to let go of things. Just thank it, let it go. Also, I haven't done my dress all the way up to the top because I can't reach it myself, and otherwise if I do reach it and zip it all the way up, I won't be able to get it off, and all of my family have gone to bed, so if you can see that my top is undone, that is why. Next up, Roald Dahl, my man. Oh my gosh, he was a great writer, wasn't he? This was a little compilation of stories from his kind of more adult suitable stories, because obviously we know Roald Dahl for writing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, all those beautiful stories. The lesser known stories from him are actually adult suitable stories, so kind of more sinister stories, and not scary stories, but kind of, a lot of these had a twist in them. So it's basically a collection of short stories, all with a similar theme of lust, and there are actually 4 different books in the collection. So there's madness, deception and cruelty, and obviously lust as well. And I really want to pick up the other ones because I really enjoyed this. I loved how I could just pick it up and put it down, you know, read one short story, come back to it, you know, half a year later. If you've been around since I hauled this on my channel, you're a real one, because I got this second year of uni, I think, which was quite a while ago. Still got the label on it from Rough Trade. £8.99. Definitely got my money's worth. I don't have to say this is well written, you already know it's well written. And his writing style reminds me a bit of John Steinbeck. Attention to detail is like, it's really there. He knew what he was doing, didn't he, this guy? And if you want to know my favourite stories in this collection, I would say they are Georgie Porgy, The Visitor, The Great Switcheroo, that was a good one, and The Rat Catcher. They're my faves. So it's a real eclectic collection of stories. Some of the stories were better than others, but it kind of had that Inside Number 9 vibe, where some of them had a twist, some of them were not that great. Yeah, onto some fiction books. I realised there weren't many fiction books in that collection, but this was a book. I picked actually both of these up from a charity shop. They were both £1.50, and I would say that neither of them were my favourite. They probably get a 5. They're both 5 out of 10, 5 out of 10. This one was by Graham Norton and it's called Holding. I know what you're thinking. Graham Norton, an author? I didn't know either. This is actually his first novel. I think it's maybe his only novel. It was actually pretty well written. Like, I liked it wasn't poorly written, but I did think the storyline was a little bit rubbish. Some bones are uncovered on a building site in this little village in Ireland. It's like the story, like whose bones are they, and then all the other stories of people in the village kind of unravel. But when you actually find out what happens, obviously no spoilers, it's very much an anticlimax, is what I would say. So like, I think it was written fine, but I think the storyline was rubbish. So 5 out of 10 for this one. I wouldn't really recommend. And last but not least, The Couple Next Door. This is a highly recommended book by other people, #1 bestseller. This was definitely a page turner, and I think that it was thrilling in a sense, but it was also thrilling in a sense that it's like every single twist and turn they possibly could fit in here. It felt like they had written down every single possible twist and just tried to cram it all into one book. It's basically about a couple who they have a baby, and they're trying to get a babysitter because their next door neighbours are also a childless couple, and their next door neighbours are having a party, like just a dinner party, just with the two houses, so the couple's going over to the other couple's house, and they're trying to find a babysitter to look after the baby, because the couple without any kids, they don't want a baby at their dinner party. It's, you know, it's her birthday, she doesn't want a baby screaming, so fair enough, they say okay, we'll get a babysitter, and they eventually can't get one, or their babysitter cancels last minute. I can't really remember, but for whatever reason they can't get a babysitter, so they have to just leave the baby next door, and they just keep going back, like every 20 to 30 minutes they keep going back to check on the baby to make sure she's okay, make sure, you know, she's all good, she's tucked up nicely. And they have this dinner party, all's going well, and then towards the end of the night they go to check on the baby one more time, and she's not there, she's gone. And it's like, where is the baby gone? Did someone take the baby? Is she still alive? What's going on? I know what you're thinking. Sounds like what happened with Madeleine McCann. I feel like the author tried to take the sensationalism of the Madeleine McCann case and tried to cram it into one book. I mean, it was readable, but I wouldn't say it's the best thriller in the world. So yeah, that is it. That is the last book I've read. Don't know why I did that little hair flick, but that is the last book I wanted to cram into this book review. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you did, because it's something a little bit different for me. And if you did enjoy, I will do another one of these probably in a year's time. Let's be honest, I'm a slow reader. Maybe I could do a more condensed version of this, because I feel like that was quite a long video. But I really hope you enjoyed, like I say. And if you want to see some more from me, please do subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you very soon. Thank you.